Jason Horne. I'm a principal of Tennessee Online Public School. That's me with some child who happens to be mine. I do a few things. I'm a musician in addition to being a principal, also a father and husband and adjunct professor. I'm a Francophile, meaning I love all things French. I speak French, used to live there, used to teach there, which is real weird going from my hillbilly Northeast Tennessee accent to French, but I can do it. And then I just put that there to fill up space. But we're going to talk about the fascinating world of online school attendance. Or we can just talk about Game of Thrones, whichever one you want to do. Probably be better. But we're going to talk about that. And I've been a principal this will be my 6th year now. We founded TOPS in 2012. It's 100% online. Raise your hand if you're involved with a 100% online school. Very good. That's a lot of people. And one of the things I love about InstructureCon in general is not feeling like I'm the weirdo in the room when I go to a professional development thing. Because in Tennessee, there are literally 9 online schools. 3 of those are online high schools, and the other 2 are just sort of regionally located. We're statewide, so we're an oddity in Tennessee. So we serve the entire state, which if you don't know much about Tennessee, from one end to the other, going from east to west, it's about a 12-hour drive in a car. It's a very long state, and geographically diverse. So that's us. So let me explain how attendance works in Tennessee. Now, I will go ahead and give you the disclaimer that everything I talk about concerning attendance and what we do to attendance is if we really can't slap the bumper sticker on, hey, this is best for kids, because it's really not. This serves a bureaucratic purpose. Since attendance goes into our funding formula, we have to keep attendance. Since the state law says that students have to have a certain number of hours of seat time every day and every week, we have to keep attendance. So it is a bureaucratic necessity, and it's also a fiduciary necessity, because if we didn't keep attendance, then we wouldn't receive any funding, which means we'd have to close. So the way it works in Tennessee is they say that students have to be in school for 6.5 hours a day. And then you multiply that by 5, and that's how much it is for a week. And so that's what you have to do, even as an online school. And in Tennessee, they passed the Virtual Schools Act, which many states did because it came from the, if you've ever heard of ALEC before, they're a group of people that write legislation. A lot of their education legislation tilts towards school choice. And so the Virtual Schools Act came from ALEC, and it basically said that any LEA can set up a statewide virtual school. You guys go for it. So on paper, we look the same as any other high school in the state. And Casey likes our acronym. I kind of don't like it. I wish we were like Millard Fillmore High School or something, not something so obvious as Tennessee Online Public School. But they came up with that name before I got there, so I can throw those people under the bus. All right. So let's talk about, what does research say about attendance and attrition and that sort of thing in online courses before? This is old research, but that's because higher ed's been doing online courses for 20 years, right, or more. If you think about it, Abraham Lincoln is probably the most popular online student because he taught himself with books at home, right? But in modern online schools, 10 to 20% of those students had a higher failure rate than traditional students. And then in 2010, Smith found out that 40 to 80% of online students drop out of online classes. So that's the thing, right? And so that's also a kind of a problem that we're going to have straight out of the gate in an online school. Except we're not dealing with college students, we're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds who may have good parent support at home, who may not have good parent support at home, but one thing that they all have is not a fully developed frontal lobe. So we have to deal with that. So our first semester in 2012, we decided, okay, so obviously what we have to do is count login hours. In 2012, we were not yet a Canvas user. We used Moodle. Is anybody familiar with Moodle? Boo, right? Unless you're a programmer, then it's amazing. But if you're an end user, not so much. And this is we switched to Canvas our second year for obvious reasons. But our first semester, we had 100% perfect attendance, right? That's awesome. I mean, think about the research I just showed you. That's impossible. But here's the thing. Out of all the work assigned, by October 15th, we start school way too early. We start school Monday in Tennessee. Like, our school starts on Monday, this coming Monday, because we care more about testing than we do children. But 18% of all assigned work by October 15th was completed. That means there were that many people behind on their work. A math teacher who's not with us anymore, I mean, he's still alive, but he didn't work for me anymore. He made the statement, but Jason, if all my students did all their work, I'd never have time to grade it. Yeah, he didn't last. But you can see that October 15th, first year principal, first year open and online school, I'm having an oh crap moment. Because what's that going to look like in December? What's that going to look like in May? And we're on block scheduling, which if you didn't know what that is, students take 4 classes per semester. In a brick and mortar school, that's 4 90-minute classes as opposed to 7 or 8 45-minute classes. So this semester ends on December 15th. We've got 2 months for all those kids to get caught up. But yet here we are at 100% perfect attendance, right? The accountants are happy because that means our ADA, that means like we get fully funded for all of those students. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure that perfect attendance means they were there for 6.5 hours online.
Yes.
Every day, 5 times a week.
Yes. What we do, Moodle had a little thing where we could go in and just add that up automatically, and we would check that against our records, and and so everybody was there. You're welcome. And so, as I said, this is the stuff of nightmares, like Crocs. All right, so freaking out. So we changed. And I'll tell you what we changed to. But we made a change, and you can see, and I don't like how this graphic looks now that I can see it. But so in the fall, 100% attendance, 18% work submitted. Then we made a change, and then we went down to 85% attendance and 90% work submitted. So we made a change, and I'm just going to tell you what that is. We focused on work. We decided what's important. Like, what's truly important? Because our model, we do a lot of the same things that everybody else does, such as videos, readings, and that sort of thing. But really, students learn in our online school from doing the work and getting feedback on that work. It's didactic in that nature, and that's what we did. I'm heavily influenced by the work of Phil Schlechte, if you know who he is. He wrote Working on the Work, and he says students don't learn from work they don't do. And popular aphorism, what gets measured gets done. So we kind of combine those two things. Lindsay, will you raise your hand? Lindsay's one of my teachers, and she was actually my school secretary at the time. And she came up with what we ended up using. So what we do, every Friday night, all of your work's due. And so we use the module feature just to do your weekly work. Teachers prorate that work to count for a certain number of days of attendance. It's kind of perfect if you have 5 assignments for the week, right? Because you got 5 days, 5 assignments. 1 assignment counts for 1 day. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes, like, if you have a research paper due in English and it's the culmination of a large project, that probably 1 assignment probably counts for 5 days of attendance. On Monday, teachers go in and they look at the work that's been turned in, and then they determine the attendance, and then we use Power School, which is our SIS, and we go into Power School and put in the attendance for the preceding week. Worked out great because it puts the onus on the work. It puts accountability on the students to do their work. It puts accountability on the teachers to see if students did their work and hopefully grade it and give feedback in a timely manner. But we had some bumps along the way. First of all, we have frosting. Frosting is named after a kid whose last name is Frost. And I've gotten permission to use this story for the rest of my life because we decided to call what he did frosting. Well, Tyler's a great kid. He's going to graduate from college next year. He's in his junior year of college now, but at the time, he was a junior with us. And what Tyler figured out is that most of my teachers just go in and check the attendance without actually looking at the assignments. Because you can open up Gradebook and just see, is there an icon there or a dash? If there's a dash, they didn't do it. If there's an icon there, they did. I'm going to get this attendance out of the way and then move on to something else, and I'll come back and grade it. So Tyler just started submitting blank assignments. So he was getting perfect attendance every week. And about after the third week of him saying, I don't know why it's submitting blank assignments, right? Because kids, they think that you're old and you think that technology is some sort of magic that, oh yeah, it's magic. I don't know why the magic's not working. Well, so we figured that out. And other kids have independently among themselves figured out that they could frost. So now we've put that as part of the reasons why you will get kicked out of our school kind of thing. Just sort of a, heavy hand there. But so we had to start looking at assignments, which was good for teachers. The other thing we did is we decided, we can do a Sunday due date. So when we first started it, we decided to give a Sunday due date to give students who didn't finish their work in time an extra 2 days to do it. And what we thought, that's going to really help the procrastinators because now they're going to be forced to do their work on the weekend. And so what happened is, all the students started doing their work on Saturday. And then they were needing help. And so they're emailing all their teachers on Saturday. And I love a hard worker, but I don't want people to work on the weekends. I just don't. I believe in family time and having a life and all those things. And so my teachers, God bless them, they were sitting there I got to help this kid. I don't know what I just did. And so they're sitting there, I've got to help this kid. And so they're working all weekend doing that. And finally, one of the teachers said, well, why don't we just make the due date Friday? Okay. So we changed that from Sunday to Friday. And then the accountability piece I added this past year. Who's familiar with ESSA, the new education law that's passed? Anybody familiar with that? Replace No Child Left Behind. Well, one of the metrics that we have to look at now is chronic absenteeism. And never even thought about it, heard about it, whatever, until ESSA came along. And then I got my chronic absenteeism numbers in November of last year and found out that in 2015 and 16, we had 28% of our students who had chronic absenteeism. Now, that's a lot. A lot of times it was for medical reasons or whatever, but still, it's a high number. And so what we started doing is every week sending out an attendance report to parents that was attached to a Google form that they would have to fill out every single week that they had 3 or more absences. And so they would fill out that form, say why the student didn't get their work done that week, what they could do to prevent that from happening in the future. It was really just kind of a way to embarrass that entire family about having to fill that out. And so as you can see, we went in the first of the year, there was 54 or so students that had 3 or more absences, and then we ended up the year, it was the same 17 usual suspects. And it wasn't always, just not doing work. Sometimes it was other things, but we just counted even excused absences. We counted those. So that made a big difference. So just adding that extra layer of accountability on top of it really helped. So all of this, you can see the trend here. The arrow's going in the right way. We started out in 2012 having an attendance rate of 83%, basically, and last year ended up with 95%. That's good, right? Who thinks 95% is a good number? You would think so. I thought so. I got really excited. And then I had one of the worst Bob Ross happy accident moments in the world because I was reading literature on ESSA and about chronic absenteeism and all that stuff because I wanted to learn all about it because I know that my district's very big on these types of things and they're going to hold my feet to the fire. And then I ran across this article, very tragic. I'm excited about it. I'd even bragged to my director about 95%, and then I ran across this article. And it said, when 95% is not an A, and it's talking about your overall attendance rate. And so what these folks at Attendance Work recommend they say that you need to be somewhere between 97% at the minimum to really to be working against chronic absenteeism. So we have some work to do, but that's sort of our journey with attendance. And I know it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but what I want to hear from right now are people involved with online schools. How are you keeping attendance? Somebody want to volunteer and tell me that? Yes, ma'am.
I do it by the assessments being turned in on time.
Okay. Is that like quizzes and assignments and all of that?
Graded, turned in by its due date.
Okay, so you're doing something very similar to what we're doing then. That's great.
We either do it by assignment or contacting a staff member or teacher. So if they've reached out to the teacher and they've had some kind of like interaction with them during the week, that gets counted as and it can count as attendance even if they haven't finished the work.
That's great. That sounds similar. And we started out, in the very beginning of this, we really started out with, well, contact your teacher and ask for an extension if you need one. And then we just found out that started being abused in a way. So I was like Monty Hall. I'm like, sure, go ahead and have 5 days, and that sort of thing. And then I ended up being more closer to Voldemort, sort of like, well, I wouldn't do it, but your teacher can. So I'm really just trying to be the man, and I want my teachers to rebel against the man a little bit. Yeah, I'll give you one, but, I think it works better that way. All right, I think I'm at the end, so I really wanted to save time for questions. But one bold statement I will make is if we hadn't changed our attendance formula the way we did it, our school would be shut down right now. I would be here representing a different school district or probably mopping the floors somewhere, but because it's really hard to transition from online principal to much else, but at least in Tennessee. So, but it really saved our school. And the cool thing about that is that, the person who was doing attendance, the school secretary, stepped up and came up with a plan, and we were all like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. Yeah, let's do that. And so way to go, Lindsay. But it was really a problem that we had to solve. We didn't have a year to solve it. We didn't have a year to form a committee and create some action plans and all that. Like, that had to be done right then. And I hate all those things like a task force and that sort of stuff. And so we were we were just very agile in solving this problem. So that was really cool. The references I got are here. I don't think, if they post these online, that's where you'll be able to get it. Yes, ma'am.
What kinds of explanations, because like a student has 3 assignments in a week, that should take the whole week's hours worth, but
Right.
it could take a kid 2 hours and he's done.
Right.
Are there,
Well, but you also have to think of, I've got to get through all of this instructional stuff first. There's also the thing, like when we do discussions, most people will say you have to reply to the discussion and then wait 24, 48 hours and then reply to somebody else's comment. So we have like little embedded rules like that will also affect this. But we really do try to look at, okay, so for an average student, starting with the instructional material, taking notes, maybe asking questions, plus doing the work, this should be, right, that much time.
whether or not the kid took an hour or 12 hours, it should take this.
Right, and it works like this too, as you guys know how, like for example, junior year is probably compared to, like, relative to all the other years of education from kindergarten except for like medical school and that sort of thing, junior year is probably the hardest. So, I tell them, like, if you're a freshman, you can expect to spend about 7 to 8 hours per class a week. And if you're a junior, it's probably going to be closer to 10 because you're at the end of the line. And in Tennessee, all of our state testing basically ends with the junior classes, so they get the most attention. Algebra 2, I mean, that's definitely a 10-hour minimum class. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So your attendance formula doesn't actually take into account, say, seat time?
No. No.
Our state does. So I'm actually in higher ed, but I'm a board member for a public K-12 school,
Right.
which you guys have probably heard of, you know, and they've got this big national infrastructure. So part of their LMS is a seat time monitor. So actually, the kid's mouse can't go quiet for like 40 seconds, or they're considered non-attending. And same actually with the teacher as well. So
It sounds like a good dystopian novel,
it does.
like the beginning of it.
So I
Like I had to move my mouse every 40
yeah,
seconds.
I mean, I'm wondering
Yeah.
if it's like twitching all the time, you know?
You know they make a device that plugs in USB that'll whip your mouse so your
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
What-
I'm always looking for
Yeah.
things as a board member, you know, but,
It's very easy.
Well, and so we had to deal with a lot of that, like especially when we were doing the hours, and the kid hadn't turned any work, and so I'm calling the parent, and I'm gonna do my typical angry Tennessee parent. Well, my kid, he's been in there working all day. He's worked on that thing all day. I seen. I'm like, do you know what Alt Tab is? He can hit Alt Tab and change the screen every time you walk by. Well, he ain't doing that. And I'm like, oh my God, kids lie all the time. What are you talking about? And so, you know, that's been a thing. The analytics and Canvas has been very helpful. Like when parents swear their kids have done all their work, they just didn't turn it in. I'm like, what? I even had a parent tell me the dog accidentally plagiarized. So the dog jumped up on a keyboard and copied and pasted a popular poet from an African poet that the child was trying to pass off as their own. I just said, "You're gone. You're just gone. I'll send you the paperwork tomorrow." But yeah, and I don't like to kick people out. That's the only person I've ever kicked out of our school for something like that. But it's just a funny story. So yeah. So yes, ma'am.
Can I rapid fire you a few questions and I'll
Go for it.
you after?
Yeah, great.
Does your school use canned curriculum materials? Do you buy them from
No, we create our own.
Okay. Do your teachers do online classes, like mandatory online classes throughout the week for any of the courses?
Oh, like live?
Yes.
No, we're entirely asynchronous with office hours for students who need one-on-one help.
Okay. And you mentioned that you kick students out of the school.
Yes.
So like if students aren't doing their work, like if it's a public school, how are you kicking them out of the school?
Well, I don't kick them out, I counsel them out. Because here's what happens. In the state of Tennessee, once you reach 10 absences, then you're considered truant. That means I take you to court, to truancy court. So basically my conversation's this. Once you get to 15, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to go somewhere else where you're in a more appropriate learning environment, or we're going to go sit in court. And I've driven like some people just buck up and will want to go to court. And so I go file an affidavit in that, and it has to be the local court too by Tennessee law. So it could be 10 hours away from where we are. The furthest I've had to go is like 4 hours away. And once they got served papers, they decided to make it work. You know, so I don't know. I'm an administrator. I try to sound tough. I'm really not. But it's really just one of those things. It's not about removing the child from my school as much as it is about getting them in a place where they're going to get an education. Because if they're sitting there doing nothing with me, that's a waste of their time. And if we could have 5 or 6 years in high school, like the graduate kids, which I think we should, every other country does that. Nobody thinks that, oh, well, they got to be out by 18 or there's something wrong. If we had 5 or 6 years, then I could tolerate it for a year and be like, okay, you screwed up that year, we're going to do it again. But they've got 8 semesters, or they're a dropout. So we have to act fast, especially if somebody transfers in their junior year and it's first semester of junior year and they're doing nothing. Well, that puts them immediately at risk. So I've got to get them where they need to be. Financially, it would actually be more beneficial to keep them in my school and just be like, okay, I got more kids, get more money. But I'm not into that. So, any more rapid fire before I move on to somebody else? I love the lightning round. That's great. Go ahead.
I guess I'm not totally clear on how the attendance days are put in. So if like a student puts in work and receives a C, do they get less hours then for that week versus an A assignment?
No, it's about completion of assignments. So if they do everything and make like a 50, like make an F on everything they did, they still get the attendance credit for it. Yeah, as long as an assignment. Now, we will like if people turn in absolute garbage, sometimes I will play a heavy on that and be like, if we get work like that again, then we're not even going to give you attention. Like if it's clear they didn't spend any time on it, what I have to do is, as like the gatekeeper of this, I have to be the one that says, okay, probably legally can't do it, but nobody's going to sue you over one day of, absences. But I'll just say, look, we're not going to count your work as being turned in if it's clearly you took 5 minutes to do that. You submitted one sentence for a 5-paragraph essay. That's not going to fly. So every now and then we have to do that just to keep people from gaming it. And again, I don't take a lot of pleasure in all. I like watching the spreadsheet look good, but I don't take much pleasure in all of this because I really feel like, oh wow, we're online. We could be so more flexible, but the bureaucracy puts us in this role where it's like if we want funding, then we have to do this, and so it's one of those deals. In the back.
How do you work with your faculty to coach them on implementing something that is effective like that in regards to what you were specifically talking to? Like, how do I identify the assignment, determine that meets my attendance requirements, and then how do they work through that?
Well, the first thing is, if you're starting out this process, is have really good people who have common sense. The second part is we talk about it, we collaborate, and I will identify people. For example, Miss Eubanks sitting here is my full-time English teacher, an amazing teacher. She does hers where it's all laid out every week of, this assignment counts for this many days and that sort of thing, which gives the child a sense of how to plan their work for the week. The other thing is that I require them to do a sort of a model plan for the week in that class. And the students don't have to follow it, but, instead of them being left to their own devices, it gives them an idea. And so I just share different examples from other teachers of what they're doing, and eventually everybody just kind of caught on and talked about it. But people didn't have much of a problem with it in the beginning. Like it just kind of made sense to us. Yeah, like basically in the module description, I asked for a few things. I asked for what are we learning? Why are we learning it? What are the state standards associated with this? What do I call that? Suggested pacing guide, and then how much attendance credit is it worth for a week? Carrie here does amazing module descriptions, so does Lindsay, the beautiful PDFs, and I said, hey, look what Carrie's doing here, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that's cool, I want to do that. And so eventually I started seeing everybody kind of starting to do the same thing. Yeah, you're welcome. Which I'm so excited about blueprints because a lot of this is going to be a lot more uniform and a little bit easier to do. Yeah. What else?
Do you all have an attendance secretary that enters the information, or the teacher puts it in your SIS?
The teacher puts it in the SIS. The attendance secretary goes back and reviews it, and then we have an excused absence database of people who've submitted doctor's notes and that sort of thing, and then she will go in and excuse any of those absences. And then I come in on the tail end and run a report and send a report out. I use a really cool tool in Google Sheets called Form Mule. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like a mail merge feature. So I can quickly just put that into an Excel document, quickly export email addresses, and then zip a personalized email to every one of those students and their parents about missing those days. It takes literally 45 minutes from snout to tail. So it's pretty cool. All right.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hey, go eat lunch, kids. Have a good day. Thank you all for coming. I want to apologize to the cameraman for not repeating any question because now on the video, nobody will hear the questions, but whatever, it's fine. Y'all have a good day.